to this very important topic on the opportunities and challenges of new technologies, digitalization, and artificial intelligence for youth peace builders. I will begin with an introduction to the topic, giving a bit of framing, and then I will invite the panelists to come up. It is truly an honor to open today's panel here in Addis Ababa, the political and diplomatic hub of the continent, home to the African Union, numerous UN agencies, international organizations, and civil society actors. Addis provides an ideal platform to reflect on African-led innovation and leadership in peacebuilding, particularly the role of young people in shaping the future. We are living through a period of immense technological transformation. Artificial intelligence and digital technologies are rapidly reshaping the world we live in, how we communicate, learn, work, and even resolve conflict. While these tools offer powerful new opportunities, they also raise complex challenges that must be addressed, particularly in fragile and conflict-affected settings. At the same time, Africa is the youngest continent in the world, with over 70% of its population under the age of 30. Young people are not just digital natives, they are digital leaders, and increasingly peace builders, activists, innovators, and policy influencers. AI and digital tools are already playing a growing role in Africa's peace and security landscape, from automated early warning and response systems to natural language processing for hate speech monitoring to AI-powered mapping tools for humanitarian response. The potential is clear. At UNDP, we are working to support ethical and inclusive AI adoption through several initiatives. Our Youth Peace and Security Hackathons have empowered young innovators to design digital peace solutions. The Safe City Lakana app in Mali has built a new model for collaboration between security forces and local communities. Our work in cybersecurity training in Western Central Africa is building pathways for young people into peace and tech careers. And through the Global Digital Compact and in partnership with ITU and UNESCO as well as others, we're ensuring youth and peace priorities are reflected in global digital governance. Yet, despite this momentum, only 10% of the global AI economic gains projected by 2030 are expected to reach the global south. This points to the urgent need for policies and investments that close the digital divide and support African youth-led innovation, especially in peacebuilding. As mentioned earlier, while AI presents enormous promise, we must be equally clear-eyed about its risks. AI tools can amplify bias if not developed responsibly. Digital spaces can fuel polarization, disinformation, or surveillance. And the digital divide threatens to leave behind those without access, including youth in rural, marginalized, or conflict-affected areas. That is why this particular conversation is not just about innovation, but it's also about values, justice, human rights, and inclusion. How we can ensure that the digital peace-building space is one where youth are not only beneficiaries, but co-creators. Their lived experience, creativity, and networks are essential to designing solutions that are responsive, ethical, and sustainable. This session is therefore driven by the need to better understand and support how youth across Africa can leverage AI and digital tools to strengthen peace and security, and to ensure that they are equipped, empowered, and included in the digital future of the continent. To that end, our panel today has 4 core objectives. To explore how AI and digital technologies can support youth-led peacebuilding efforts, including early warning systems, combating misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech, and enhancing conflict analysis, particularly in the context of developing and implementing national action plans on youth peace and security. addressing ethical and practical challenges, including algorithmic bias, misinformation, cybersecurity threats, and the widening digital divide, with a focus on ensuring AI is developed and deployed in inclusive and youth-sensitive ways. To highlight policy and investment priorities to expand access to digital infrastructure, strengthen digital literacy, and build the capacity of youth and youth-led organizations to harness AI for peace in even the most marginalized or conflict-affected communities. And finally, to strengthen regional and international collaboration, bringing together youth peace builders, governments, development partners, and the tech community to promote African-led, locally owned solutions in the digital peacebuilding space. The discussion today is going to feed into the development of a policy paper capturing key insights and recommendations. I would like to take this opportunity to extend our sincere gratitude to our esteemed partners in this event, the African Union, the UN Association for Ethiopia, the Institute for Security Studies, and Inclusive Peace for their collaboration in making this session possible. We are also grateful to each one of you for joining us both in person and online. And on that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our panel. I would first like to call up Ms. Bethel Gebeyu Mekonnen. Bethel is an enthusiastic program coordinator and international development professional with over 7 years of experience empowering young women and advancing sustainable development. Currently serving as a program coordinator at the United Nations Association of Ethiopia, Bethel leads initiatives that engage young people in policy advocacy and global cooperation, including the African Union Delegates and Representative Program, which supports UN youth delegates across East Africa. A very warm welcome, Bethel. Secondly, I would like to invite Mr. Taye Abdul Kadir, Youth for Peace Program, African Union, PAPS. Taye is a senior technical officer working with the Continental Early Warning System and the Youth for Peace Africa program within the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security in the African Union Commission. He has been working in the area of peace and security for more than 16 years. He played a big role in the conceptualization and operationalization of the technical aspects of the conflict early warning and response, data collection and analysis tools. His studies in the field of engineering and IT, as well as social sciences, give him a great background in speaking about AI and peace building. We have a panelist who is online, Mr. Philip Popelruta from Inclusive Peace. Philip is a researcher with Inclusive Peace, a Swiss-based think and do tank undertaking comparative research on peace and political transition processes and providing tailored, discrete, and real-time support to stakeholders who are themselves engaged or seeking to influence such processes. He has been leading on several of Inclusive Peace's research undertakings over the past years, covering various topics, including women and youth's meaningful participation in peace and political transitional processes, and the intersection between technology and peace building, among others. And finally, we will have Dr. Immaculate Asige Liaga, who will be summarizing and also providing some of the next steps at the end of the panel. Immaculate is a researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, where she contributes to policy-relevant research and technical support to strengthen the African Union's Commission's response, capacities in peace support operations, peace building, security sector reform, and youth, peace, and security. Her work bridges research, strategy, and implementation to enhance the effectiveness of African-led peace and security initiatives. Immaculate, please do come up to the front. Thank you. So once again, a very warm welcome to the panel. And I'd like to start with Bethel. As a youth-led organization actively engaged in peace building, what are some of the key initiatives you have implemented that involve the use of AI or digital technologies?
Okay. Thank you for having me, and also thank you for this meaningful conversation. That is very timely indeed. I am here representing the African UN Youth Delegates Program, which is a program that focuses on youth advocacy and unites young people from 6 East African countries: Sudan, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia herself. So we work on 3 mandate areas that are youth-led and youth-focused and also youth-driven, mainly around meaningful youth engagement, youth unemployment, and also youth peace and security. So just to go to your question and how we integrate AI and digital platforms in our mandates, these young people are trained. Just to give you a background, over the past 3 years, we've trained and deployed over 34 young people, young diplomats, to global forums such as the UN General Assembly, the ECOSOC Youth Forum, the UN Civil Society Conference, and so on and so forth. So these young people are trained based on research that's conducted across the region, across East Africa. Something that's notable that we have advocated for in 2024 is, under our YPS agenda, is the use of virtual technology for peace education. So what this does basically is it integrates the use of VR in a way of crisis simulation, but also peace education, and it kind of immerses the user in that peace education platform to kind of understand what the community goes through during conflict situations, but also what recovery would look like and how we can move forward. This is something that we advocated for, but also it comes from the experience of our extended 240 fellows across the region and what they've done, especially from Sudan. And it's a particular example that we've done. Another thing that is also notable is addressing the use of digital platforms. For example, we just recently, last year, there was a nationwide protest against the finance bill in Kenya. Something that we've learned from that is that how we can use the digital platform. So that protest was born online, born on formerly known as Twitter, but now X. It was born there, it grew there, and it kind of showed how young people can have youth-led but youth-driven agendas, and how they can sort of influence policy making. So just learning from that, we took that into saying these digital platforms can be a platform where we advocate for peace-led peace-led initiatives, but also peace-led advocacy, and it shows a very huge potential in the digital realm. So these are the 2 things, maybe notable things that we advocated for last year. But this year, going forward, there are two tools that we aim to launch. The first one is the Youth Peace and Security Co-Pilot. What this does basically, this is something that we've also piloted last year. It gathers data on peace and security from young people across the region and analyzes it against peace agreements, against ongoing peace initiatives, and also how we can align what are the gaps, to understand what are the gaps, and also what are the needs of these young people. And this tool also kind of develops diplomatic language, and how we can better synthesize this report and present it in, like I told you, in global forums where we mainly have our advocacy efforts. Another thing that we are championing for this year is our Youth Peace and Security Advisor Co-Pilot. This is more of, again, in peace education, where this year, what we're planning to do is when we have these peace education officers on the field, this pilot would kind of aid their efforts, where it provides legal support, where it provides fact checking, where it provides the necessary assistantship for them to deploy whatever initiatives they have on ground. So these are the two things we're targeting for and that we're working for this year. Yeah, something besides what we're doing, a notable thing that we can also learn from is a recent intervention that was done by one of our partner organizations in Somalia, where they used an AI-supported policies tool, where this was used in their implementation plan for the National Reconciliation Framework. This tool actually helped them align strategies in real time, where discussions were happening in different parts of the country, but these data kind of integrated in real time to inform the conversations and bring out informed policy documents where it's inclusive and it understands the cultural context of the entire country. And yeah, and this is something that I wanted to note, something that's already being done in Africa as well, besides our program. I think I would end here.
Thank you very much, Bethel, for expounding on some of these country examples and, also highlighting what new tools are being developed. If you could just share with us if there have been any challenges in implementing some of this AI types of technologies, what have been the lessons learned, and perhaps how they have fed then into these new platforms that are being developed.
As you can imagine, it is a relatively new thing. It's in the context that we're also trying to employ it in. There has been some notable challenges. The first thing that I would like to mention and also emphasize is the lack of access. You've also said it in your opening remarks, where there are studies that have been done that shows that only 55% of young people in Africa are online. This was done by ITU. It was a study that they came out in 2022. So this kind of shows there's a big digital divide, and there's a gap, especially in conflict-affected areas, more so in the global south. But as you know, again, we represent 19% of the world's displaced young people in this East African region. So especially in those areas, there's an even deeper gap that needs to be addressed. So access is one of the biggest challenges. Whatever interventions we have, these areas are there's a huge gap in connectivity. Another thing that I would like to mention is the gap in skills. As you know, it's a relatively new concept, although it's very powerful. Our skilled man force on the ground is there's a huge gap there. So there was a research we did as part of the 2024 mandate that we developed, and we sent out a survey across the 6 East African countries. And based on the results of that research, it showed that 2/3 of the young people that took that survey showed that they had no formal or informal peace education, let alone AI-driven or digital-driven peace education. So there is a huge skill gap that we've also identified in regards to AI literacy, but also tech literacy. Another thing, maybe one last thing is, okay, two last things. One thing that I would want to mention was the reliability. So I've mentioned that we've tried to pilot this research component of our peace and security efforts and incorporating AI. And something that we noticed and that needs further development for this tool particularly is that misinterpretation of data. Just AI doesn't understand the cultural context and how we were trying to use use it to aid our research, but also this kind of risks trust in peacebuilding work. So this is some of the things that we've mentioned that we have noticed. One last thing, and also the most common, I think, for all of us here would be funding. I've tried to explain over the past 3 years, it takes training of these diplomats. I've mentioned that we have sent 34 young people from all over East Africa, but there's also a cohort of 200 plus fellows supporting these young people. So it's a very extensive work whereby selection and also training of these young people. So it's very extensive and it's also very resource consuming. So also adding AI tools and building these AI tools is also very resource consuming. Um, yeah, so that's one of the challenges that I would want to mention. Another thing, maybe as a lesson learned and what we have tried to do moving forward is that we start small. So last year, like I told you, we had an emphasis on using VR. This is something that has been done, that has been piloted in Sudan, but also it's focused, it's local, and it's small. So it's something that's scalable. Something that we've tried to do is to start small. Another thing that we have done is to learn from others. Like I've mentioned, another intervention that was in Somalia, we can learn what has worked by looking at their tool, how it has understood the data, how it has informed those policy interventions. One last thing that we have learned is that since it's in the context of young people, it should be youth driven um, and not for young people, but by young people. So that's something that we have learned again from the Kenyan protests, but also from the interventions that we have had over the past 3 years. So yeah, this are.
Thank you very much, Bethel. And very interesting to hear, some of these projects starting small and scalability. And I now want to move to more of the continental, level and turn to Taye. As the African Union has adopted the Continental AI strategy to leverage technology for both development and peace building, and with the African Union's continental framework on youth, peace, and security in place, how does the AU support the advocacy efforts and AI capacity building initiatives for youth-led peace building? And additionally, if, in your response, how is the AU helping member states to develop and implement youth-driven AI solutions for peace building?
Thank you, Nirina. Good to be here in front of all these youngsters. Thank you for your very valuable introductory message earlier. You encompass most of the ideas nicely. Bethel, it is good to see youngsters making the difference on the ground. My intervention is going to be from the perspective of the African Union Commission. As Nirina speak, most of the things that can be done or have been done by the UN, my intervention is going to be focused on what the African Union is going to think about that. Therefore, I will begin with the very definition of our understanding of the AI itself, as far as the African Union is concerned. Okay, therefore, as per, okay, first of all, I should confess something here. The African Union is a very latecomer to this particular discussion on AI and related technologies, even if there are bits and pieces of technologies that have been implemented in different sections of the AU. The African Union AI strategy was only adopted in June 2024, okay, together with the Digital Compact. And our most important decision-making organ on peace and security, which is the Peace and Security Council, started engaging in AI-related issues since effectively 2023. Okay, therefore, even if we are coming late, okay, there are lots of opportunities in bringing that up. Therefore, the very understanding of AI, as per the African Union AI strategy, defined as the simulation of human intelligence processes by machine, especially computer systems. Specific applications of AI include expert systems, as mentioned by Nirina earlier, natural language processing, and speech recognition systems. This particular field, which combines computer science and robust data sets to enable problem solving It also encompasses subfields of machine learning and deep learning. That is how it is being understood. And the African Union Peace and Security Council on its meeting held on 13 June 2024 and on its communique 1214 acknowledged the potential of artificial intelligence systems to revolutionize societies as well as contribute towards the promotion of peace, security, stability, democracy, and development in Africa. Therefore, this is a very important guidance in incorporating this particular endeavor, most importantly to achieve Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. AI can facilitate data-driven decision-making and improve public service delivery for our member states in building their national peace infrastructure. African governments and businesses can leverage AI for better resource allocation, infrastructure planning, and also disaster management. AI can be employed for secure and transparent elections, reducing fraud and ensuring the integrity of democratic processes. This is critical for political stability and building confidence in governance. However, despite this particular potential, there is a potential for misuse of AI affecting governance, peace and stability in the continent. I think some of you have started noticing that. For example, the danger of political ads that use AI technology to generate deceptively realistic false content, okay, including hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, okay, such as deepfakes, which are manipulated media that depict people doing or saying things they didn't say or do, or events that didn't really occur, to mislead the public about what candidates are asserting, their positions on issues, and even whether certain events actually happened. Therefore, if left unchecked, that is a very important arena that all of us should look into. These fraudulent and deceptive uses of AI could infringe on voters' fundamental rights to make informed decisions. Therefore, it is in this respect that the AU-PSC 1214 meeting, and we had another meeting on March 20, but the communique is yet to come out, urges member states to ensure ethical and responsible use of artificial intelligence technologies and to ensure that they are developed and deployed in adherence to international law and human rights norms to minimize harm and promote ethical use. I'm just adding my voice to what Nirina earlier introduced in there. One important milestone that I can talk from the African Union is, of course, the development of the African Union AI strategy. It is available online. Okay, you can adopt and you can adapt to bring out some kind of specific activities and implementations from that particular document. And the other aspect, working with youngsters like Bethel, is the continental framework for youth, peace and security, okay, which has got its different pillars. Therefore, coming to your questions, Nirina, both the AI strategy and the continental framework on peace and security, they try to cover the broader aspect. For example, in very minimal summary, the AI has got five important pillars. One is maximizing AI benefits, okay, minimizing its harm, building capabilities for AI, minimizing AI risks, African private and public sector investment on AI, and regional and international cooperation and partnership. Therefore, the entire document is actually expanded by bringing these five pillars. And as most of you are aware, the continental framework on youth, peace and security also has got five pillars in the form of participation of youth, okay, in many decision-making and other sectors, prevention of violent conflicts, protection of young people in cases of violent conflict, partnership and coordination, and disengagement and disintegration. Therefore, these particular documents give that particular avenue, okay, in order to bring up some kind of directive or a kind of policy guidance on ethical AI implementation for youth builders, peace builders. What I can say here, I'm not going to say the AU have been doing this, but at least it is trying to lead in the policy arena by crafting that. But as part of our policy recommendations, okay, we can actually consider the following. How the AU can support advocacy first and AI capacity building for youth-led peace builder initiatives. One is the policy integration and coordination. That is the most important thing that we started playing by bringing important policy frameworks. The most important one is the AI strategy and continental frameworks like the continental framework for youth, peace and security, as well as the different pronouncements of our Peace and Security Council. The other one is trying to create advocacy platforms and youth representations. For example, I don't know how many of you are aware, we have got the African Union Youth for Peace Africa program, and through that particular program, we have youth ambassadors for peace that are representing the 5 regions of Africa. Then if you are from Eastern Africa region, for example, you can work with our Eastern African ambassador, okay, in order to initiate some kind of activities, okay, that are going to leverage on the YPS agenda, the Youth Peace and Security agenda. We have also the AU Special Envoy for Youth Special Envoy, okay, nominated by our chairperson. Her office can also facilitate some kind of advocacy platform so that okay, works like battles that can be really highlighted at the highest level. But the AU can also do the following. We need to really invest on capacity building and skills development as part of our mandate of building national peace infrastructure. Okay, because if we are doing everything in Addis Ababa level, okay, we are not going to really achieve things. We need to go really down to the member state level in order to make some kind of a difference through the different mechanisms that we are having. This capacity building and skill development can be in training programs, or they can be in partnership with state institutions. Okay, for example, companies that are investing more on AI, okay, whether it can be the Googles or the Facebooks of this world. Then the fourth aspect that the AU can actually really help on is support to youth innovation and entrepreneurship. Okay? Okay, for example, if we start doing some kind of a competition every year in order to bring out some kind of innovative ideas, okay, being awarded okay, at the continental level, okay, that is going to give some kind of leverage. A good example that I can really name here is AfriLabs, which is based in Abuja. It is not related to the African Union, but it is a very good innovative lab which is based in Abuja, and it has got more than 500 plus networks that are incorporated into that innovative hub. Therefore, if we encourage such kind of mechanisms, that is going to be a wonderful approach. Then the fifth one can be knowledge sharing and best practices. Okay, that's what we are doing here now. Okay, in this kind of forums, okay, by publishing different papers, by bringing up on the ground examples like what Betel mentioned earlier, okay, all these are going to play a very important role in that regard. Then let me try to summarize for the second part of the question, how can AI practically support peace builders? Okay, therefore we are really looking into it from not the technological angle, but from the YPS angle. Use, but involving in peacemaking. Use involved in promoting the youth peace and security agenda. Therefore, what possible arenas are there? Since I'm working in the early warning arena, I have got good examples that we can showcase. If you come to the African Union, okay, you can see some AI enabled, machine learning enabled tools that are influencing decision making. Okay, but again, it is always a very important anecdote that we should say here. Even if AI has got so much leverage in predictive analysis, in doing early warning, the early response aspect of it cannot be influenced by AI. Okay, because all early response actions are usually politically driven. Okay, therefore, don't try to come up with some kind of a technological solution for a political problem. Okay, but try to make your technological solution as informative as possible, as creative as possible, so that at the end of the day, it is going to really convince your decision maker so that the decision maker can act on the evidence you are providing to that person. Okay, therefore, one important arena that AI can play a big role in is conflict early warning and early response. Okay, therefore it is basically proven, especially the conflict early warning part. Okay, but again, we need to be creative on bringing early response. How can you really wow your decision makers so that they can see a single visual and they understand many of the things that are coming? How can you really save the time of our busy decision makers, okay, so that with a very coherent kind of communication, we can communicate whatever that we want to communicate. The second aspect is peace messaging and countering disinformation. This is a very huge arena, especially nowadays. The proliferation of social media, the proliferation of misinformation, intentional misinformation and disinformation, hate speech. There is a lot of things that can be done, usually by leveraging on local language. Natural language processing can be adapted by bringing it local slangs, local issues, okay, so that this kind of miscommunications can be captured earlier. The third one is inclusive dialogue and mediation tools. For example, some of you may happen to mediate between husband and wife. That's good. Okay, but that husband and wife are two people. But what if the husband has got another 50,000 behind him, okay, influencing it, and the wife also has got another 10,000 behind her, and each of these 10,000 and 50,000 actors are influencing each other. Okay, consider a country like DR Congo, for example. Okay, the international influence, the regional influence, the national influence is too much. Okay, therefore, if you are applying game theory, rational decision-making theory, etc., okay, you can still have got an insight on how to resolve or mediate that, but unless you are deploying a machine, unless you are deploying a computer system, it is becoming very difficult to deal with that. Therefore, that is also a very good arena. Then those of you who are working on the grassroots, resource optimization and planning can be facilitated by AI. Okay, for example, by doing some level of predictive analysis in order to scale up, okay, what you plan to do moving forward. Then AI also can support accountability and transparency. Okay, and that actually helps you to do your actual implementations on the ground in peace building with very much transparent governance. Then, of course, you can also think about personalized training that can be facilitated by AI. Okay, my kids are now asking Siri instead of typing something. Okay, or you can create chatbots, you can create other mechanisms, okay, that are actually helping you for personalized learning. Then the last one that I can mention is mapping and data visualization, especially if you are really thinking about busy decision makers that are going to require your attention at the end of the day. Therefore, my final thought, Nirina, I took more time, I know. Just remember this, AI is a tool. It is an enabler. It is not an end by its own. And in my opinion, AI is not going to replace humans, okay? Still, there are humans at the end of the day. The only thing that matters is how ethically we can actually use AI. Therefore, its success depends on use inclusion, okay, people like Beta, digital literacy, data ethics, and responsible use. For it to truly support youth-led peace building, investment in equitable access, training, and safeguards is very much critical in echoing what Betel said. Thank you, Nuri.
That was great. Thank you so much, Tai, for all of those contributions and sharing how it can be used. I actually have a very brief follow-up question. It'd be remiss of us not to mention the 10th anniversary of the Youth Peace and Security Agenda, and noting, you said that there's new sort of momentum opportunities with, looking at AI solutions, for peace building. There's the policy level. When we're looking at the policy level of development of youth peace and security action plans, are you seeing, from the support the AU is providing, more of the incorporation of AI as an enabler within sort of even the discussions leading to the development of these YPS action plans?
Thank you, Nurina. Another confession again. Okay. Therefore, the continental framework for youth peace and security, adopted in 2019, reached its 5-year anniversary last year. And we are now midway of our 10-year implementation plan. And of course, this year is the 10th anniversary of the UN Youth Peace and Security Agenda. And of course, 25th anniversary of the Women Peace and Security Agenda. Therefore, in order to promote these kind of things on the ground, we are requiring national action plans. And if you look into the development of national action plans across the continent, it is still at the infant stage. And countries who did this, like Nigeria or DR Congo, for example, they are still lagging in the implementation of it. But our hope is that when more and more countries are developing their national action plans, it is going to give us an opportunity to implement what they plan, and the opportunity of implementing AI during the implementation of those national action plans is going to be really immense. That being said, however, our ambassadors who are actually liaising with the different youth leaders in their own respective regions, they are encountering a number of youth-led initiatives. I'm hearing from Bethel, for example, especially in West Africa, to give some examples. There are lots of initiatives that are actually using AI-driven approach in order to address some of the issues, most importantly, issues related to discrimination, issues related to hate speech, issues related to disinformation, including climate-related disinformation. All this can actually be supported by AI. Therefore, our ambassadors are doing a lot of work together with those young people on the ground. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Taye. I'd now like to turn to Philip, who is joining us online. Philip, in your work, how do you address the intersection of AI, peace building, and youth? And how does Inclusive Peace contribute to bridging the gaps in this area through its work?
Thank you very much, Nerina, and thanks a lot, Betel and Tai, for these super insightful contributions. It's really fascinating to hear what's going on in the field and what you are up to regarding your work on youth, AI, and peace building. And I see a lot of potential to connect the dots and to learn from each other. So I'm really humbled to have the opportunity to be part of this conversation today. So basically, starting from basically how we approach the intersection between AI, youth, and peace building in our accompaniment work with in-country partners is looking at it through the lens of inclusion and participation in peace processes and dialogue processes. We try to support and accompany our, like you said in the beginning, various stakeholders who are already engaging or involved in peace and dialogue processes, or who are seeking to be more involved in these processes. And based on the work that we have been doing, and we have worked with youth groups, women-led organizations, women groups, particularly in East Africa and the Horn, there are a couple of challenges that the youth has encountered when seeking to influence peace processes. And we are really trying to think about how AI can help the youth to address those challenges in a targeted way that takes them in the driver's seat, basically. And I would like to highlight a couple of challenges that are particularly relevant in this regard. And I mean, of course, this is not a non-exhaustive list of the challenges to youth inclusion in peace and dialogue processes. But when thinking about how AI can help them to address those challenges, they can be particularly relevant. And I think one general observation in this regard is that the youth is a very diverse group. There is this tendency to think about youth and women as a homogeneous group that shares, that has the same interests, the same positions, and thinks very similarly about various issues. But in reality, obviously, there's a plurality of identities in a youth among the youth, and those different regional affiliations, socioeconomic affiliations, and other different identities can really drive disagreement or can create challenges in finding a common agenda that the youth wants to push for, or finding common positions. And this issue is compounded by the fact that there's a lack of spaces for the youth to come together, to deliberate, to have a conversation with each other, and to really agree on the points that they want to push for and to promote. And particularly, of course, when it comes to political issues in a peace or dialogue process. So that space is missing. And another challenge that is also relevant in this regard is, of course, the lack of visibility for youth in peace processes. So them struggling basically to not only find consensus at times for what they want to actually push for, but also to make themselves heard in the space. And those issues are, of course, amplified by security risks that youth and women are facing when trying to influence peace processes, particularly in conflict-affected areas, obviously. And what is interesting here, at least from our perspective on seeing the gaps in the field, is that there's some talk about the online risks that youth are encountering: hate speech, defamation, slander, these kind of things that have become more prominent recently. But there's less talk about how online consultations, online AI-powered deliberation among youth can actually provide them with an entry point into peace processes and to enhance their participation. So that's why we basically sit together with experts to screen AI tools and ask ourselves how specific AI tools can help to address those particular challenges to youth engagement, to youth involvement in peace processes and dialogue processes that I've just outlined. So this is how we look at this intersection and try to make a contribution in using AI in a meaningful way to enhance youth participation.
Thank you very much, Philip, in terms of highlighting, the challenges and, how to address them. It would be interesting, just to hear a little bit more from you on perhaps some, country level examples in terms of, how these gaps have been bridged, how these challenges have been addressed, or perhaps even some of the lessons learned for trying to address these gaps.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Narina. I think it is useful, and I can only, based on our experience, only echo what Betel said, and also what Tai alluded to, this aspect of starting small, exploring, being very deliberate in exploring the potential of specific AI applications to enhance participation, to strengthen the visibility and the role that youth play in peace building. And of course, different applications come with different strengths, advantages and disadvantages. And I think one application that I would like to highlight particularly here in this space, and that is interesting, is the AI-powered online deliberation and consensus building tool Polis, which can help to address the challenges I mentioned earlier. And Polis is Polis. And basically, this is Polis uses advanced statistics and machine learning to allow large, inhomogeneous groups to engage in online conversations and build consensus on a variety of issues. And just to give you a quick overview of how it works, like very basic, and there's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, every participant in a Polis conversation has the opportunity to draft statements which the other participants in the conversation can then vote on by saying either agree, disagree, or pass for every statement. And the algorithm then uses the responses from the different participants to cluster them into opinion groups, which means that at the end of the day, the more statements participants vote on, the clearer Polis can identify opinion groups and areas of agreement and disagreement within a group. And that can be very helpful to identify, those areas of agreement, which then a large group can tap into or build on to build their agenda around that, but also to address potential areas of disagreement in a more structured and deliberate way. So, and this consensus building tool has been really effective in a variety of country contexts. Polis has been used already, and also in also featuring youth. And one project I would like to highlight particularly here is from Southeast Asia, which was led by, and this project was led by UNDP, where they brought together 30,000 youth into a Polis conversation, where the youth built consensus around their priorities for climate action ahead of COP26 in 2021. So Polis has been applied, it has been road tested already, and this has generated important lessons also, which are to be taken into consideration, or which can be taken into consideration when thinking about how Polis can enhance youth participation in peace and dialogue processes. And I think what's important regarding Polis and this question of how it can enhance youth participation, there are a couple of key points to take into consideration. So Polis can really create a youth-led space, a youth-led dialogue space, which youth can really use themselves to build consensus on agenda items they want to push for, advocacy strategies, etc. So this aspect of inclusion and ownership is really important. I completely agree with what Tai and Betel said on this earlier. And Polis really gives them the opportunity, because participants, the youth, in whatever context, on whatever discussion, they can decide themselves what they want to discuss about and how they want to shape the discussion. So there's really a good opportunity for them to take the lead on the discussion they are having themselves or amongst themselves. Polis is also scalable, which is in the sense of that it can accommodate thousands and tens of thousands of participants and give them the opportunity to engage in this discussion. So it's really promoting, and it can really promote an inclusive dialogue. And the fact that it is open source also implies that youth can use Polis as a more permanent asset in their consensus building and advocacy efforts moving forward. It requires, of course, some technical accompaniment in the beginning. It's not exactly super straightforward to apply it, so it requires some learning, as with everything. But over time, it can really become a tool, and is not only a one-time event or one-time effort, but can really grow, but can really develop into a more permanent tool that youth have at their disposal. And then, of course, there's also this aspect that Polis can also invite decision makers in the same space where youth are discussing. This has also happened in the past in Timor-Leste, for example. Parliamentarians have joined youth conversations happening in Polis, which really facilitates the transfer between youth discussions and what decision makers were discussing. But of course, there are also challenges here with this specific application, and this also very much echoes some of the points that, or many of the points that Betel and Tai raised earlier. First and foremost, of course, the question around access, in order to ensure that a diverse and representative crowd of youth is participating in a Polis conversation. It of course requires to also access remote areas which are not directly connected or hooked up to the internet. There are different strategies to work around this, also to make sure that outreach campaigns where participants are invited into a Polis conversations reach a large part of the populations. SMS campaigns and radio campaigns have been very effective in this regard. So really combining AI with more traditional outreach measures has been very effective here. Of course, there's this aspect of data security. Polis comes with different ways and modalities to make sure that the data is secured or stored safely, and that the identity of Polis participants is not revealed. But of course, those discussions about data security have to be adapted to a specific country context where the tool is applied. And of course, every conversation on whatever issue, sensitive issue, economic, environment, political, always comes with the risk of some hate speech or some foul language. So also POTUS polls, of course, require some technical accompaniment and skillful facilitation. And this is where like some pilots in dialogue and peace process contexts will of course be very helpful. And we are currently exploring opportunities for conducting such polls in sub-Saharan Africa. And like Bertel said, I completely agree. The design of these tools is key, and using it as a means to an end, and taking small steps in the beginning to really make sure that there's trust in the tool and that it can really kind of maximize its potential.
Thank you very much, Philip, for those contributions and the very concrete example, and also learning from another region, and the importance of the cross learning. Hearing about the policy level, the country examples from Eastern Africa, the Horn, West Africa. That was an interesting point of also the youth-led spaces, inviting in decision makers as well. So at this point in the conversation, I would like to open up the floor if there are any questions, contributions from the floor. We also have some online participants. The floor is open. Yes, please go ahead. We can take a round.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amin. I am part of the youth delegates in the program Bethel was talking about earlier. This question would go to Mr. Taye, because you've been actively engaged in processes related to the peace program as well. But in overall, I know the implementation of the YPS agenda is pretty much lagging behind in the African context. But in terms of supporting that process, what actions has the African Union been doing actively, maybe in the context of Ethiopia as well, because Ethiopia being the host country for the African Union, I'm sure a lot of diplomatic pressure will also come in related to that, and also other alternative programs that are currently going on in the African context to involve the youth, besides the ambassadors program. And I'm not sure, but there are other, like the national YPS working group that UNDP is also actively engaging in, maybe if there are other aspects of the African Union. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll take one more from the floor.
Thank you very much. This is Brooke from Andaras Youth Association. It was a very insightful discussion, and just some question for Mr. Taye from the African Union, because my mind questions me many times when I heard such kind of discussion. Why international non-governmental organizations like African Union, which is seated 10 or 5 kilometers away from where we are here, does everything alone? I can't say from that, because it's from our perspective of view. Why not to integrate with local youth initiatives, organizations that are working on the grassroots level? Because I think cooperation and partnership with such kind of local civil society can increase the target or the goal that we are planned or aiming for. So how is your willing to work with local civil societies? And also, is there any platforms or mechanism that the African Union has planned already to do that? Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more person. There's some online questions. We'll go to the panel, and then we'll have one second round.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, all. Abisalom Samson is my name. I work at the Institute for Economics and Peace as a fellow. My question goes to you, Bertel. Is there any way that you work with the ministries from here to let the youth to understand what peace building really means? Thank you.
So there's some also online questions which I'll pose to you, and then we'll revert to those from the floor. How can we create stronger partnerships between the tech community and youth peace builders to drive innovation? What are some risks or unintended consequences of using AI in peace building, and how can youth mitigate them? And the last question is very much on inclusion. How can AI technologies be used ethically to support the participation and empowerment of youth with disabilities and refugee youth in peace-building efforts? And what specific opportunities does AI offer to better include them? I think I'll leave the inclusion question to Philip. There were some targeted questions to you, Bethel and Taye. Would you prefer to address these? And then we'll go back to the floor for a second round.
So maybe if I can ask again, when you what do you mean by ministries? Do you mean government or? Okay, so basically, we do involve government in our advocacy efforts. We have had a lot of consultations. For example, last year, one of the key things that we were championing for, maybe you know it, is for the Pact of the Future that was adopted. We had various consultations in regards to the youth aspect and how can the youth contribute to the Pact of the Future, various online and offline consultations, and also in collaboration with the UNRCO office here in Ethiopia. As part of our initiative. So yes, we do involve the government. We have also had conversations with the Dialogue Commission, National Dialogue Commission, in informing what our advocacy, in informing our mandate, understanding the various contexts. But you also need to understand that this program is not only run in Ethiopia, but also run across the 6 countries. And there are some contexts, for example, in the case of Sudan, where involving government in these kind of conversations for the present future wasn't possible. But these again, mandates were informed by civil society, by the community at large. So just the different contexts in the different countries are different. And yeah, I believe I've answered that question. Maybe I can answer the risks of AI. There are a lot of risks that it has already been mentioned in our discussions. Some things like misinformation, some things like AI not understanding the cultural context in which we are trying to use it to inform our peace and education. 2 things that I can say for us and the people using these AI tools would be awareness creation and capacity building. Again, coming back to peace education and how we can use these tools. Again, like Mr. Taye was saying, that it's a tool that we can use to further facilitate our on-ground interventions, but also coming back in how we build again these AI tools, and that it's informed with the basic data, but it's also informed of the cultural context, and a lot of informing and feeding in of data that is representative to the people that will use it, so that it doesn't represent the people that are trying to use it. Yeah, I'll end here.
Thank you for those questions. I would like to try to answer the first 2 questions. Then I hope Philip is going to address the risks and inclusion issues. Yeah. More or less, the 2 questions are similar, effectively. Therefore, in the YPS arena, we are trying to assist our member state in building national action plans, and specifically for Ethiopia. We are working with the National Youth Council, I see Lika here, for example, and the Ministry of Women Affairs, that has got the youth file under it. But the most important aspect here is that we do have 55 member states in the African Union. And from the headquarters, we cannot really cover up all those countries. It's difficult. The best approach we can do is appointing youth ambassadors that are going to take chunk of each of these countries. Then, for example, this year, each of the 5 ambassadors have got priority countries. Therefore, we will make sure we are going to work in capacitating these priority countries through our ambassadors, okay, so that they are going to either adopt national action plans or implement national action plans if they are already implemented there. But effectively, if you look into, Valentin, I should borrow your slogan, ECOWAS of the people, okay? Therefore, is AU really AU of the people? Okay, if I ask random question here, okay, about the African Peace and Security Architecture or the Africa Governance Architecture Platform, how many of you are going to answer? It's very rare, yeah? Therefore, the Youth for Peace program really take into consideration this kind of thing in order to engage youngsters through what they like most, game, okay? There was a game called Mission 55, okay, developed by the Youth for Peace Africa program, okay, in order to engage youth so that they can understand the different instruments of the African Union, either for conflict prevention, for conflict management, resolution, peace building, post-conflict construction, etc. Okay, therefore, if we somehow involve in this kind of activities, we can attract more grassroots. And when the grassroots are aware, okay, they can actually come forward and take the opportunity. Therefore, regarding your question, Brooke, for the platforms, what possibilities are there? Okay, for example, there is a PSC open session every year. Okay, during the youth months of November, there is a PSC open session. Therefore, what does that mean? Open session mean it is open to everybody. Okay, therefore, you are very welcome to come and attend and make your voices heard. This is one thing. And the other aspect, okay, if we somehow group ourselves, for example, if there are civil society actors on the ground here that are working on youth-related issues, instead of becoming 9 and 10, okay, it is better to come as an umbrella, okay, so that collectively coming, it is going to bring in some resources. Nirina can give us good resources because UNDP is rich, okay? but of course, we are not really rich in resources, but at least the African Union has got that political clout, okay, in order to mobilize those resources to you. Okay, therefore, instead of waiting until the AU comes at your forefront, okay, it is better to come forward and try to organize yourselves so that you can come up with some kind of an agenda. In the other arenas, for example, in early warning, we get lots of our grassroots data from civil society actors, primary data from civil society actors. But some regions are really advanced. West Africa, for example, ECOWAS is working with the West Africa Network of Peace Builders, WANEP, and at the same time, AU is working with WANEP. And we have another civil society umbrella called Southern African Partnership for the Prevention of Conflict in Southern Africa. But is East Africa and North Africa having that kind of equivalent umbrella? No. Okay, for example, WANEP has got more than 700 member CSOs in 15 countries. But who we are talking to? We are talking only to one civil society umbrella that has got a headquarter in Accra. And they do have a liaison office in the AU. Therefore, if you are a member of WANEP in West Africa, through this MOU, through this liaison, now you can actually make your voice really heard. Therefore, there are a number of platforms that are available from different programs, but again, instead of waiting until the AU comes, it is better always to organize yourselves and come forward to interact. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Tai. So we'll turn to Philip on the question on inclusion.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks a lot for bringing this question up, which is indeed a very pertinent one. Before I answer it, I just like on this one, as the one question that also came up on the partnerships between tech and youth. I think what I like, also based on my very personal experience, is creating spaces where youth, individuals with organizations with peace building expertise, and then of course tech experts come together to discuss or to share their knowledge and then collectively think about how to bring those together is really key in this regard. And because I think like we all have our different kind of perspectives and expertise and look at certain challenges when it comes to inclusion and peace and security through through our own angles or the angles we are used to. And bringing those things together in physical or online discussions and having joint strategies for how to first of all how to understand what's already there, what tools are already there, for example, what they can do like technically, but then also in designing those tools or tailoring them to the specific context that a tool is supposed to be applied to, being very mindful of the context specificities. So not everything that's technically possible is necessarily a good thing to do in a context. So bringing those different actors with different expertise together to really concretely discuss the application of AI tools, I think that's very important. And those can be hackathons are a great opportunity, right? From my own personal experience, a great opportunity to bring those various experts together. Those are youth mostly, of course, but there you already get a feeling about what is possible, what has been done already, and where potential challenges are, and then based on those exchanges, reaching out to tech companies or trying to get larger tech companies and their developers, their AI experts on board. I think this is the way to go forward. So really seeking to promote interaction and spaces where like the different actors, youth, peace building experts, and tech experts are coming together. And on the question of inclusion, yeah, of course, I fully agree. It's very important to make sure that the application of AI is not exacerbating or is not driving exclusion or only including a certain number or a certain group of people or not excluding anyone. And I think what came out of the discussion today is that applying AI or using AI as a tool in context or around peace building is always a process. It requires very careful and skillful crafting of a process to make sure it is applied in a way that it is owned by the youth, that it takes into consideration the context specificities, etc. And bringing on, like, for example, people with disabilities, refugees in this process from the very beginning onwards, I think is key. So that they, from the very first moment one starts thinking about how a specific AI tool could be employed in a specific context, that this already takes into consideration the perspectives of minority groups, of people with disability, etc., so that they can really shape the process from the beginning, and that, like, the implementers of a specific AI-driven initiative take their perspectives into consideration. And this, of course, also requires some collaboration with representatives of different groups who can be invited to those initial planning discussions, and then also can serve as multipliers, basically sharing information about a specific initiative with their groups or communities or networks, so that there's awareness of an initiative in the first place. But then, of course, also thinking with tech experts about what kind of specific requirements there are to make sure that specific groups can be included in the first place. So, for example, how can be a tool made? How can people with disabilities, for example, employ a certain tool? How can they make their voice heard? There are opportunities to do that. Same with language barriers, for example. There are ways, of course, to translate the surface or the interface of certain tools, and there are also ways, of course, to make the tools applicable for refugees, for people with disabilities. It just comes with specific challenges, and being mindful of those challenges, having them clearly fleshed out in the beginning, and then thinking collectively with tech experts about how those challenges could be addressed from a process design point of view, but also from a technical point of view. I think this is really key. So inclusion in any planning, strategizing process from the very beginning onwards is key here, because the rest of the process will then unfold But this is not something like where like thinking through these considerations of inclusion at the stage of implementing a tool, for example, then it's already too late. So really start from the very beginning to incorporate those voices.
Thank you very much, Philip. We'll go now to the floor. I know there was a question from a colleague from ECOWAS, and then the lady behind you.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists. My name is Valentina Tonde. I'm a Senior Program Officer, APSA. I represent ECOWAS at the African Union. And thank you for having me here. I just want to add my voice to what Tai said and regarding ECOWAS implementation in the framework of the 4x4 strategic objective. ECOWAS has urged the member states, the youth especially, to leverage on AI and other technologies to grow and ensure peace and stability in the region. And also beside that, the Commission also is exploring the way of using AI, to tackle the counterterrorism with also, engaging the member states when it comes to peace support operation. My question is, yes, AI is a tool, but when we are talking about Africa, how do we see Africa in 2040, 2063, with the full use of AI and also the implementation of special skill employment? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, the panel, for organizing the discussion. How using technology can enhance peace building and using AI and digital tools, also which inclusive of for use. So my question is, as many of you, the panel, are mentioning that how your organization working on peace building and how engage users in that. So my question is how your organization or organization system measure how it measures that the platforms are also usable for the not only for the urban centered users but also for the undeserved or the rural users. So how could you use it, because it's in Africa, like some of the underreserved, there are under-reserved users, how they can engage in peace building sources that you are engaging.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Absram Nuyellet from ZOA, Peace Building Advisor. So I have two questions, and I think the first one goes to Mr. Taye, but I would love also to hear from others. So the first one is, given the context in the security context in Africa, the political related conflicts and security issues are the critical one. So, and I heard Mr. Tayi saying we should not look for AI generated solutions for political problems. So what would be the expected role of AI in resolving such kind of issues or problems? That's the first one. And the second one is, it's more of similar what my sister has mentioned, as a person working in humanitarian sector. So how can we ensure the engagement, or there are hard to reach area, there are youngsters in hard to reach areas, including in the rural areas, but in IDP centers, refugee centers, and also conflict-affected communities. They usually face this lack of internet access and the blockage regularly, as we are currently seeing even in our country. So what are the possibilities to bring these youngsters on board through updating them on this ongoing innovations, and how can we ensure inclusivity in this process? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for those questions. I will turn back to the panel for brief responses, and then we'll turn to Immaculate for summary and reflections. So, Bethel, we'll start with you.
Yeah, just to briefly reflect on a few questions that were raised in terms of inclusivity as well. This is something that we've also identified as a challenge in running our program. And one thing that we do in terms of access for people in the rural communities. It is a challenge. It's backed by data, backed by statistics, that connectivity is one of those challenges. But when something that we are, for example, I can talk about one tool that we have suggested that aids and assists the peace educators. So these peace educators go to those rural areas, and they are the ones that technically need the technology. It's assisting the peace educators. So in a way, these areas are reached, but connectivity does not play a huge factor in hindering at least peace education for these rural areas. But I would like to also reiterate that these researches that we had, especially in the past years, are informed by not only the capital cities of these countries, but also the regional aspects, because our fellows, not only the two delegates that represent the country, but our fellows are from the various regions of the country. So it's somewhat inclusive, but the challenge does lie, and it is something that needs further interventions.
Thank you, Peter. Quickly, Nirina, regarding Valentin's question, how AI can actually benefit the achievement of our Agenda 2063, for example, of course, the African Union is there to create policy that is going to be hopefully binding at the national level. But in order to, for example, the Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, it was released in 2014, and it took 9 years until 2023 to get the minimum number of signatories, 15, so that it can take into force. Therefore, even if we do have lots of policies, the implementation of those policies at our member states, it is going to take up time, because we are yet to be ultranational institution. Okay, we are totally dependent on the will of our member state in order to implement most of those things. Therefore, as much as possible, the EU should take the lead in order to produce a cohesive policy arena, so that member state can follow the footsteps accordingly. Regarding your question, basically I frame it this way: how can we bridge the gap of early response? Okay, because early warning is easier. You don't need even AI. You don't need. Okay, it's not a rocket science. If you have so many youths unemployed, okay, and there is an election, it is a recipe for some kind of violence. Therefore, how can you address that? It is not an issue of really sophistication, but rather how can we act upon? Therefore, one of the most important questions raised by decision makers is, how early is early warning? Okay, therefore, a very good solution that can minimize that how early the time is the utility of technology. Okay, therefore, this is one very good approach. Visuals they like, a kind of a comprehensive, very nice report instead of, that's why in every report we do have an executive summary, because the executive is busy, therefore we need to attract the executive in that way. Let me use a very good example. In many of the ECOWAS summits, civil society actors are being called, most importantly WANEP, okay? But they are given 2 minutes to do their intervention, okay? Therefore, the former executive director of WANEP, Okay, he's a good friend. Basically, he started his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, in the coming 3 years, I expect 3 additional coups in the countries of ECOWAS. Thanks for your time. I finish. Okay. Now he attracted their attention. Okay, by that statement. Therefore, whatever time he needs now, it is going to be given to him. Therefore, you need to be creative in order to attract political decision makers so that they can act upon it. Okay, because denialism is one of the biggest factors, especially in conflict situations that are yet to escalate, yet to come. Therefore, many countries deny whether those things are available in there. Therefore, how can we tackle that? We need to be creative. How can we be creative? We need to apply as much available technology as we can. That is the kind of recommendation I can take. Adding to what Bethel said, nowadays, if we take, for example, Ushahidi in Kenya during elections, it did a very wonderful thing, okay, in order to map electoral violence activities, but it has been driven by SMS messages. Nowadays, I think I can fully vouch that mobile penetration in our countries, especially in Africa, is really high. But how many of the people are having smartphones? Limited. Okay. Therefore, if we somehow create chatbots that are working on SMS instead of having an internet connection, etc., okay, then we can reach a number of possible people out there. Thank you.
Very much, Taye. We'll turn to Philip very briefly. Perhaps if also you could address the issue of measurement of use, and then we'll go to Immaculate.
Yeah, sure. No, I'll make that. I'll make that very brief. So just quickly, I mean, there are. I think when it comes to this question of how to use AI for discussing political questions or other issues, we just have to be very kind of, also what Taye just said, very creative in thinking about how can we use AI to promote dialogue, to foster consensus, to create a space to actually engage on some of the underlying causes of instability or conflict, and thinking about how those can be addressed. And there are ways. The application I mentioned earlier is one of them to enable those spaces and carefully think about like how to use AI to enable discussions on more political issues, basically. And then, of course, regarding the measurements, I completely agree. And I mean, it just requires a lot of careful thinking and planning, obviously, to think about how you can bring more remote areas on board. And I think again here it comes to a careful design process, basically, where you're not only, I mean, even though you try initially or in the beginning you try to take small steps and to really actually test the application of AI tools, which we are also like still doing, obviously. So it's not like, okay, this tool is fully functioning and now we can expand it. But even though you might initially be inclined to just say, okay, we just focus on urban settings, for example, because there people have internet access, and then we can just test what the tool can actually do. Well, yes, on the one hand, of course, also taking funding restrictions into consideration, but making a deliberate decision really to factor in those outreach questions to more remote areas in the planning process right away. So and then you can also think like because there are different, obviously there are different levels of remoteness or different types of remoteness. Is it there's no physical access? Is it conflict affected areas? This has different implications. And I think bringing in experts from the context to think this through and think about, also help tech experts then think through what they could do to make this tool more accessible, maybe to find a way that you don't need permanent internet access to use the tool or to contribute to a process using a tool, but maybe it's possible to just provide temporary access, which then can be used. And that devices for collecting the information can also be provided from outside for a specific time, and then just enable participation every now and then. So those are questions, and I mean, of course, there are various challenges and which require country context specific answers. But I think it's just important to really be mindful of that inclusion aspect already in the piloting phase, and then really try to set clear goals and objectives regarding the inclusion of more remote areas, and then thinking together with tech experts on what kind of challenges there are to include those areas, and then how they can be overcome. So this also requires creativity from the tech experts, obviously, because many of those tools are obviously designed based on the assumption that there is internet access. So just, and this is what I also meant earlier, like bringing those tech experts together with peacebuilding experts and context experts and youth, etc., to really make it clear to each and every one what are opportunities and challenges existing. So this exchange, I think, will be very effective in addressing this question about remote access to remote areas.
Thank you very much, Philip. It's been such a rich discussion, Immaculate. Now turning to you with the task of final reflections and wrap up on this discussion.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and this was such a rich discussion. It's very hard to kind of like condense everything because I think we covered everything from inclusion of youth to AI as technology and AI governance. So it's quite a very rich discussion, but I do want to highlight several core insights that have emerged. So we've all learned that AI holds an immense potential to accelerate peace-building efforts, but only when it's shaped by ethical frameworks, local realities, and youth agency. Also, one of the key messages that stood out was the need to democratize AI development, moving from tech that is to build that's built for communities to tech that's built with them as well. And here, the youth must not only be users but co-creators of peace and technology. And I do appreciate the example you gave about the Kenyan protest on the finance bill, and as you rightly mentioned, there was a whole discussion between the youth and the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, at that time with that. But one of the downturns about that is that that's where it ended. The youth never took it forward for any political gain beyond the finance bill. And you can also find that a lot of the youth within these spaces are actually being silenced. If you also maybe engaged with the elections of the AUC chair, there's a lot of chat as well within the Twitter space and also other platforms on the Kenyan youth and their perspective on who should win, and that was also very much silenced. So in terms of democratization, the space hasn't been quite democratized, and despite the insightful gains and progress from the Arab Spring to even up to now, we do see the strength of youth in AI, but the space is quite, it's still held by the elites, and it's most of the political elites want to control the space. We also reminded that trust and transparency are non-negotiable, especially when deploying AI in sensitive contexts, where misinformation or surveillance can actually deepen divisions rather than heal them. We've seen still in these spaces about hate speech, and that's one of the things in South Sudan that has also been brought into the forefront. So while there's broad consensus on the promise of AI and digital inclusion in supporting youth-led peace and peace-building efforts, we also have a bit of diverse perspective on the risks and digital divides, data colonialism, and the potential to reinforcement of bias. These tensions reminds us that innovation alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by a reflection on our ethical standards, inclusion on governance, not only within the space of AI, but governance in general, and also sustained investment in digital literacy. I think Bethel gave and was talking about virtual tech for peace education. I've also come across colleagues who are working on AI and education in mathematics and physics for blind students, not only in most countries, but specifically in conflict countries who the blind, the deaf don't get access to the normal standards. Yeah. So three key points that I want to highlight very quickly because of time is our intentionality in the tools like this, especially in inclusion, ethics as I've discussed, and also the linkages between the roots, local levels, national levels, and continental levels. One last thing I want to mention is also the work on of AI at the ISS specifically. So we are coordinating with the PCRD units at the AU in writing a booklet on AI. As you all know, the new PCRD policy has a new pillar, which is youth. Of course, the other two is women and I think it's climate change or environment, something like that. So we are discussing, we have products and research on AI and peace building. We also have AI and governance, and in terms of how Africa must tailor their development and security needs and ensuring inclusive data sovereignty and capacity building across member states. We're also discussing elections and AI and environmental resilience, given the climate shocks that we are facing, post-conflict recovery, cybersecurity, human rights monitoring, also peace operations where it's affected by AI-driven mis and disinformation, and finally by our very own TAI early warning systems as well. So thank you so much for everything, and I'll give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Immaculate. Not easy to summarize. I just want to thank all of our panelists for the rich discussion, the audience, both in the room and online, and of course, the organizers of Geneva Peace Week, Ethiopia, for the opportunity to have this panel. Thank you all very much.